well as they did before. It's happened starting with Vince Lombardi. It's happened on a real regular occasion over the years. Mike Shanahan was another example of winning 2 Super Bowls here and then going to Washington and really developing coaches but not developing a championship team. I think the situation for Russell Wilson is this is going to start to determine whether he's a Hall of Famer. People were talking for 10 years, this guy's a natural to be in the Hall of Famer. 2 Super Bowls, all he was doing in Seattle. And now you got to wonder if he's falling off that cliff of being in the Hall of Fame unless he recovers what he was in Seattle 2 or 3 years ago. And so as a result of that, I think that by the 10th game, if he is not, and that's the key game, I think if you look at the schedule, by the 10th game, if he is not the old Russell Wilson, he's going to be the benched Russell Wilson. That's what's happening in Denver.
Well, then that would be a different story altogether. That's way ahead of us. Right now, you're at the practices, Woody, right? Do they get along?
Oh, yeah. I think it's worked out extremely well in terms of what Russell Wilson was able to control whatever he wanted to do last year, and that's not happening now. And he's a new guy, down 15 pounds. Peyton has given him a new offense to work with, unlike last year's, under one of the worst coaching jobs in the NFL, according to Sean Payton. I do think they're going to get along. It's just a matter whether he can actually execute, and I'm talking about Russell Wilson, the plan that has been presented to him.
You sure he's down 15 pounds, or did he just change his number on the jersey and just looks slimmer now because of that? That's just a joke. We'll get to that story. Israel Gutierrez on, do you believe Peyton's tactics here could backfire with Russell Wilson?
Well, what I believe is it's wildly unfair that we're putting this pressure on Russell Wilson to reprove himself. He already did what he did in Seattle. One bad year doesn't take all of that away, and it's not as if he has to have a spectacular year for us to say, oh, that was real, that what happened in Seattle. And if anything, I'd say that the coach has more pressure here because he's coming back and he has to sort of right the ship because we've already seen what Russell Wilson actually is, and he's way more the player than he was in Seattle than he is the guy at Denver here. So, no, I don't think it's crazy pressure, but what is that pressure to do? Is it pressure to win a Super Bowl? I mean, this is the team that has the second longest playoff drought in the NFL, so if they just make the playoffs again and Russell Wilson looks decent, I think that's a great year for them. So I don't think it's a ton of pressure.
I love the question you just came up with, a little hosting credit or producing credit for Israel Gutierrez. Who's got more pressure, Peyton or Russell Wilson, Frank Isola?
It's Russell Wilson, and that quote from his head coach is right out of the Bill Parcells playbook. Bill Parcells used to do this to motivate Phil Simms and LT and then Keyshawn Johnson when he coached the Jets. He learned from his mentor. This is all about Russell Wilson. The coach got blamed last year. Guess what? The coach ain't getting blamed this year. It's all going to be on Russell Wilson, who really hasn't done much the last 5 years.
Who's under more pressure, Sean Payton, new coach, or Russell Wilson in his second year with
It's got to be Peyton. Bill Parcells and Sean Payton, I'm sorry, mentor or not, they are not in the same league remotely. Peyton walks in there, forget about making waves. He goes full cannonball into the pool, screaming at everybody, ticking off local reporters. For me, this is all about Peyton. He is talking a lot. The goal for Denver is respectability. Forget about the playoffs.
Okay, so you say respectability is the goal, so you don't have them making the playoffs. Frank Isola, Denver Broncos going to surprise you this year? Make a playoff run?
Heck
no. Okay.
No, sorry,
Mr. Gutierrez?
No.
And Woody, you got 5 seconds to set him straight.
881, 500.
Buy or sell next.
Sounds like a...
I asked yesterday's panel whether the NFL was approaching a load management world like the NBA with all the holdouts in the NFL this year, but Nick Bosa not one of them. Just when it looked like the reigning defensive player of the year might be not paid and holding out for the most pay now, win now team in the league, he got 5 years, $170 million. Highest paid defensive player in history. And like that is availability for Sunday at Pittsburgh. Available. All good now for Bosa and the Niners, Clinton Yates?
I think it's all good now. The goal when you pick a guy that high is to make sure that he's good enough to get a second contract, and if he's even better than that, he can reset the market. Both of those things happen. And for a team like the 49ers that's in the business of trading away a bunch of picks for players they no longer have, they hit on this one, so it's a good thing he's back on the field for them.
Woody Page?
All good. You mean all great. I mean, the guy's the highest paid non-quarterback in the entire league, and this is a team that almost got to the Super Bowl last year because they didn't have a quarterback. They didn't, and they now offensively and defensively are right there to be in the Super Bowl.
Israel Gutierrez.
Yeah, if there's a better team to have the highest paid non-quarterback, it's the 49ers, who don't seem to need a great quarterback to be able to have Super Bowl aspirations. So I think, yeah, having the Defensive Player of the Year back is a good thing, and I think he'll probably be in decent shape. I don't think Bosa's probably one to go ahead and get fat and lazy and probably be available on Sunday.
And Frank Isola.
You got to love it when a defensive player gets quarterback money. This guy's an absolute menace. Think about this. In games that he plays in, the 49ers are 43-17. When he doesn't play, 5-10. The guy is an absolute game changer.
Frank, you came with the stats today. You know what's a game changer? The way they spend money on everybody that's not a quarterback. That's what the game changer. They had the Heisman, running back, tight end, fullback, linebacker. They're all in the top 3 or 4 in the league in that position. We'll move on. Baseball now. Since every panelist on this program picked the Mariners to win the AL West last week, they've lost their mojo, baby. Houston, after getting swept by New York, has gained their mojo. 3 straight crush jobs over Texas to take over first place. Houston scored 39 runs the last 3 games. Texas, with the losses this week, have fallen out of the playoffs for the first time since April 8th. And here is another amazing sentence in this show. Texas hasn't had a starting pitcher win a game in their last 19 games. Scherzer bombed last night. Woody, has the West been taken over for good by the asteroids?
Let me give you some point changers here, Tony. You're wrong. 2 weeks ago, I told you the Astros were going to win the division, and I repeat that again. They just scored 12, 13, and 14 runs. They've got series upcoming against the Kansas City Royals twice. They're playing the Oakland A's 3 games. This is a team that's going to just jaunt to the division title.
Wow, that is a lot of good information, except for one phrase, Woody, because as you may know, I said earlier, the cameras are rolling on this show. Roll tape!
Talk about the Atlanta Braves having the best offense of all time, and actually the Mariners have better offensive numbers than the Braves do.
But it's unanimous. Everybody's got Seattle. Nobody's got Houston, the defending champs.
Woody.
And Texas
come on now.
Cooled off
Don't you dare
try to tell me you didn't have the Mariners when we last talked about them. This is an incredible fall from grace on this show, and an immediate striking of inevitability for Woody Page. Israel Gutierrez.
This is quite the precedent you're setting here, live going to old tapes. But look, for fear of what I have said in the past, I will say that this is pretty obvious that this was going to happen. It felt like they made the big splashy moves the Rangers did in getting Scherzer, and Houston said, you know what, let's take our guy back in Verlander. And then look at that game yesterday. Scherzer couldn't even make it to the 4th inning. Verlander looked vintage. I still like the Orioles, maybe the Rays in the AL, but in this division, yeah, it looks like the Astros and that experience.
Frank Isola?
Yeah, to be fair, last week the Mariners were going to win the division. This week the Houston Astros are going to win the division because they're playing the best baseball right now. By the way, they had 16 home runs. Scherzer, how about that game last night? You have 2 guys with over 3,000 career strikeouts. And Max Scherzer, what has happened to him in big games? The Padres last year with the Mets, the game with the Dodgers.
You just mentioned that Verlander and Scherzer were on the mound last night. They were on the same team to start this year, Frank, and that's the team in your city. Oh, what is going on with these panelists today?
We're paying for.
Clinton Yates, I think you're already into the showdown now, but please take some time to talk baseball for us.
Last time I was on this program with Frank, he was telling me that the New York Mets were just fine with Scherzer and he'd hold up through the season. Now he's on a different team getting rocked by the Astros. Reminder, the Astros won the World Series last year. Of course they're the favorite this year, and they're just as good. Come on, man.
And reminder, the Astros are no longer the Astros, they're the asteroids in father.
Correct.
In respect to the Father of the Year. Clinton, Israel, you didn't even need to talk in that last topic because Woody Page, I mean, you asked for it, you get it. Frank Isola also appearing on today's program. That's it. Let's get him out of here. Clinton Yates, Israel Gutierrez. Showdown next. LSU extending and rewarding Kim Mulkey 10-year, $32 million deal. Richest deal in women's college basketball history. Izzy, does this mean LSU is at the top, maybe stays at the top of the women's game?
So Kim Mulkey is somebody I have trouble being objective about, or at least speaking objectively about, in large part because of things she'd said in the past that sort of show a homophobic lean, if you will, whether it be about Brittany Griner, whether it be about having, lesbian players in her own organization, in her own program, and even things that she said post the Baylor sexual assault scandal over there. So yes, is she changing the sport? Probably. Does she deserve all this? Probably. But all of this shouldn't go unspoken in a very quickly growing sport.
Clinton Yates.
The hold your nose factor with Kim Mulkey is extremely high in terms of everything that Izzy just mentioned, but I do look at the rosters of those teams. I look at women's college basketball right now. She's got the most famous team in the country because the young women on her squad, HVL transferring over there now, have been allowed to thrive and be themselves. So in terms of who she is versus what that team is, it's a difficult thing to balance, but these kids are thriving under her.
Appreciate both of your thoughts on that. Gut check. Are we looking at a dynasty here for LSU women's basketball? Maybe on par with South Carolina, maybe on par. Well, I mean, to get on par with UConn, maybe out of the stratosphere. But South Carolina, too, in the last 6 years? Is that possible? We'll have you think about it. Showdown 2, U.S. Open semis tonight. Coco Gauff's dream tournament continues. Carolina Mahova. Madison Keys, dream run in this tournament. Surprise the draw. Number 17 seed, and she's against number 2 Sabalenka. Clinton, who you got tonight?
I got Coco. I think this is her tournament to lose in many ways. Her dad, Corey's up in the crowd looking at her and doing their thing in the box and all that. But she is in the best shape of her life, and her mental state is in such a place. She talked about her grandmother's influence on so many different things and how she relates to pressure. Just love the way Coco is approaching everything right now when it comes to Flushing Meadows.
Gutierrez?
I've got Coco too, but that other match, Keys versus Sabalenka, there's going to be so much power in that matchup, and Madison Keys has been playing so great. If she avoids those tiny mistakes that can get Sabalenka frustrated, I'm telling you, it could be an All-American final.
An All-American final. So you're saying there's a chance?
Coco.
Saying there's a chance.
Clinton, you forgot the other match. You forgot Keys versus Sabalenka. I asked for who you got. You got to pick both.
Keys,
yeah,
Keys.
you didn't get it in time. Israel Gutierrez faces.
So there's a UCLA study, a peer-reviewed study that shows that apparently in football, the smaller the number, the more it's associated with being slimmer, and I would assume being quicker, right? And while I do love that idea, given that I wear number 6 on my flag football team and probably could use a little bit of a visualizing trick, I think players should go the opposite direction. I think running backs should start wearing number 55, have all the wide receivers start wearing 66, have the defenders thinking, oh, that one's slow, and boom, you got a quick step on them. I think you use the UCLA research against them. Go big numbers for the faster players. Let's do it.
Our best and our brightest researching this. They were so focused on whether they should, they never thought whether they could.
Stinks.